580 KIDO, Idaho's first radio station.
You know, the way to good old Kay Millie's heart is always promotion. So it amazed me yesterday when my friend Stephanie Zimmerman, Idahoans for Local Education, actually beat me to the punch of promoting her appearance along with Mila Wood's appearance to talk about Common Core and the SBAC test. So I'm just happy to have both of these ladies here. It's great to have you both here, number one. Number two, a lot going on in the world of education. We really thought this would be the time, and our friend Tea Party Bob out there with the Gem State Patriot goes, Kevin, we're going to hold the folks accountable. And then he holds me accountable, and he's listening right now. And but the idea of there are issues with Common Core in Idaho. The legislators said they would listen. We thought that there would be a hearing. We thought there'd be a reversal. Folks, what happened?
During the legislative session?
Yeah.
Pretty much nothing. We had several bills that we put forward. One was a resolution regarding the data collecting, and there was a parental rights one, which some people had some issues with. But those were the only two that got passed. Anything else that dealt directly with Common Core was completely ignored. I mean, at one point, the Speaker of the House took one bill, put it in the House Ways and Means Committee, and told them, you're supposed to let this bill die. And it was regarding the SBAC. And that's basically what happened this session. Anything that directly affected Common Core was put in a drawer, and the drawer was closed and ignored.
That was a good summary, And I think that it's interesting. I mean, I guess I was a little taken back this session by the amount of people going along with the good old boys club and playing the game and holding bills back. I just thought after last year that we would have had a little bit more success, but apparently we have a little bit more work to do.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the lobbying that you've both have been a part of, that you have worked tirelessly on it, and for people that can't hear it, you both are angry. I mean, you're very angry.
You know, and that's funny because I don't think either one of us are angry people at all.
No, not at all.
But
right.
I have to tell you, after spending days down at the Capitol, and we're both moms. You know, we both have kids that we're taking care of.
You have lives.
We have lives.
Right.
And
this is not something you enjoy doing, but you feel it's necessary to better the education here in the Gem State.
Yeah, and we spent days down at the Capitol. Nobody was paying us. I mean, there are people down there, you know, with their little green tags that, you know, show that they're lobbyists, that they're getting paid. We don't have any of those. We're not getting paid. This is our own time, our own money. And we were totally ignored. I mean, just, you know, and they will tell you one thing to your face. This is the thing that surprised me. Maybe it's because I'm an honest person. I don't know. But they'll tell you one thing to your face. But when they get in their meetings or whatever, they do completely different things. And it's just so frustrating when you think you have an understanding to find that somebody with more money has a better understanding with them than you do.
Well, let's examine this here at 580 KIDO. What's the latest with the SBAC testing? What's going on there? Isn't that going to happen soon, or isn't it happening now?
Each district and each school is kind of doing it on their own timelines. So we've just been working with parents across the state, helping them refuse for their children to take the test, and trying to get the information out there about why you should refuse the test. First and foremost, in Idaho, in our IDAPA rules, it says if a test is going to be used for accountability to the federal government, it needs to be valid and reliable. Well, this test in particular is not valid and reliable. There is no validity and reliability report. So in my mind, why would I want my child to be held accountable to a test that's not valid and reliable, which means that it's testing what it says it's going to test and that it's accurate in what it's testing. So we've been helping kind of spread that information and helping parents refuse with their school districts.
Are there any consequences to students, parents who refuse to take the test?
What sort of consequences are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, are people threatened that you better take this test or else because the state needs those results to justify what they're doing to the federal government? I mean, or is it just simply saying, I don't want my kid to take the test, and then everybody goes, oh, good, no harm, no foul, no problem?
Each district and each school has actually been different. And even within one district, you'll have schools that are different. We've had superintendents and principals say, absolutely, it's your parental right, no problem. and it's been pretty minimal. I had actually, my niece was given the first day she refused the test, she was given a pass to go to the office. The second time, she was removed from the class by the resource officer of the school. So
The police officer?
Yep. And I actually had to go pick her up 2 days because the school wouldn't let her be on the school grounds during the testing session. And so when I emailed Sherry Ibarra's office and I said, what law are you telling the schools to cite for this? They said there is none. So then the next testing day, my niece was allowed to be in the school.
Did they fear what was the motivation? Allegedly she'd be disruptive or something like that? That more kids would follow her example? They never gave a reason?
Mm-mm.
And these are schools here in Idaho. At 580-KIDO, 580-5436 if you have any questions concerning what's going on with Common Core. Why do you think you both were ignored? Just the big money is behind this? Your organization was ignored. By the way, you've been to kids' fairs. You've been doing a lot of grassroots in addition to being on this show and on social media and having meetings, and you've been doing this for quite some time. You have quite a big group of folks behind you on this. It's, we both think you're lovely ladies here. It's not that you're not nice people, but you do represent a huge segment of the voting public that has issues with this legislation, with Common Core. So why do you think you were ignored?
Really, I think it comes down to the money. You have to look who is for this and who is against it. And the people that are for it have a lot of money backing them up. A lot of money backing them up. The people that are against it really are truly grassroots organizations who, and I quote this all the time, but you look at the last line of the Declaration of Independence, and they pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. And that's what we have given to this. We don't have big pockets that we're pulling money out of. When we bring somebody into town, more than likely it's Milo that's paid for it. It comes, you ask me, who's paying for all that I'm doing. It's Mr. Bill Zimmerman. He's
Mr. Bill.
Yep, Mr. Bill. He's the one that is bankrolling everything that I do. I really think at this point, there aren't enough parents that are angry enough. We do represent a large portion of voters and that, but they're not angry enough yet, and I think we don't have the money backing us. Well,
we showed folks at 580kido.com, it's airing now on TV stations, the ad of the governor and the first lady. And by the way, you'll just grab that headphones if you want to listen to it here at 580kido. If you want to share it, here we go, and we'll get your reaction to it.
The First Lady and I want you to know why Idaho's new core standards are so important to the success of your children and to the future of our state. Yes, the new standards require more of our students than previous state standards, but employers are looking for candidates with strong critical thinking, writing, and problem-solving skills.
I encourage you to talk to the teachers in your school and find out what the Idaho Core standards look like for your student, or visit the Idaho Core for Idaho Kids Facebook page for more information.
And there you have it, the governor and the first lady. And by the way, the governor told us, he's asked from time to time to endorse things, to go on television, to go on the video, and talk about things he believes in, and he believes this is the right move. Your response to the governor and the first lady endorsing Idaho Core standards?
Well, first off, I'll talk quickly, and then Milo can have her turn. He mentioned.
Well, I'm glad you're letting us know which is going first. Okay, Stephanie, go ahead, please.
Idaho Core for Idaho Kids. You look at who backs that up. Once again, we're talking big money. That's Idaho big money that put together that website. So, once again, you've got IACI and all those different lobbying groups that put together that website. So, yeah.
Why would they do that, though? What's the payoff for them?
Because they have an investment. We actually have a letter from the J.K. and Catherine Albertsons Foundation that specifically says you have to make our investment pay off. So, obviously, there's money to be made. And it's 64% of Idaho's budget is education.
Right.
So there's obviously a little bit of money to be made.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we didn't get your reaction to the most powerful folks in the state of Idaho saying this is a good thing, directing people to this website. Your response?
Well, interestingly enough, one of the parents in our group was actually at an event pre-election, and Mrs. Otter said, he is against Common Core. So the stories seem to change. The second thing I would say is, where's their evidence? Where's the evidence that they are actually better? Where's the evidence that they are internationally benchmarked? Where's the evidence that they are going to do what they say they're going to do? These standards were never tested. They were never piloted. So we just don't know. This is a giant experiment.
The also issue, though, is that if you're successful, like the state of Indiana has been, aren't we going to have to come up with something similar to get the federal money? Because the federal money is tied to some type of accountability. And again, that's not your words. That's what the federal government is using, the need for these testing. So let's say we get rid of Common Core, and maybe you've heard this from legislators that say, look, it's bad, but what else are we going to come up with? You folks have done the research. You've put in the sweat equity. How do you respond to that?
There are standards out there that are better, but one of the main issues with Common Core and the standards is that they are, okay, my mind's going to go blank here. Miley, help me. What's the two different types of standards? There are two different types of standards. One's content and one's achievement standards. Achievement standards dictate that children achieve certain points. You cannot dictate that. Children are different. Content standards dictate what is taught in the classroom. You can do that, but you can't determine that children learn things on a timeline. Every child is different. Every child comes with strengths and weaknesses, and to try to fit everyone into a specific box, which is what Common Core does, it's just unrealistic. It's never going to happen. So we can take really good standards. We can take what we like of the Idaho Core standards. We're not saying that the standards themselves are all bad, because they're probably not. You talk to teachers, and they will close the door first before you talk to the teacher so that they can really talk to you. And they will say, there are things in these standards that I like, but there are things that are really bad. So let's keep the things that we like. Let's make them uniquely Idaho, and let's make them content standards rather than achievement standards. Let's make sure we know what is being taught in the classroom, because, like I said, that you can dictate, but you cannot dictate what a child learns and what a child can do. We are completely ignoring the unique aspects of our children. And I think we do such a disservice to them by requiring them to all be the same.
On the other hand, we've talked to teachers, and they've proudly said that Common Core standards have helped them. When we've been to the schools, they've said that it's a good thing. And I said, no, really, we'll go behind the closed doors and talk, and they say the same thing.
It's interesting. We do hear some of that, but we also hear a lot of parents that will come to us and say, my teacher will say to me, I can't say this out loud, but thank you for fighting against these. They are awful. So a lot depends on the teachers you're talking to, and how involved they really are in the standards, how deep the school is into implementing them just yet. The deeper, this has been nationwide, the deeper districts get into implementing them, the less schools or the less teachers like them. And frankly, Idaho's behind most states in implementing them. I think the further we get into it, the more you're going to see that teachers really don't like it, because they begin to realize just how tied they are to these standards.
That was a good summary, I think. And I think the one thing that I personally don't like is, aside from the fact that they're not tested, they're unproven, is that they were written by people that have never taught in a K through 12 classroom. So they were written by people that I, in my mind, don't think are actually qualified to write standards. When there were a lot of people that were qualified on that, on the validation committee, and the whole thing just was too sneaky. It was too underhanded. It wasn't public like it should have been. There wasn't public input. And I think the fact that we have to adopt the standards word for word, 100%, with only adding a possible 15%, which we're cautioned against adding because that won't be on the test, I don't think is right.
What about the state school superintendent, Sherry Ibarra? What's her role in this? Has she been responsive to your concerns over Common Core? Because I believe that when she ran, she was all about the core.
Well, the first time that we met with Ibarra's office, we were actually quite optimistic, I guess. She and her people around her, we talked about the cost of the SBAC test and how that was just unconscionable, how ridiculous it was, and that was not a good fiscal responsibility at all. And then we we talked about how parents' rights come into play, and they all stated that parents do have rights and that they didn't appreciate the federal government coming in and trying to dictate one way or another against parents' rights. So we were optimistic. But then a couple weeks later, she took a trip back to Washington, D.C., and met with the CCSSO, which is one of the copyright holders of the Common Core standards, and comes back kind of singing a more friendly federal tune. So,
yeah, before, earlier.
Were you guys happy with that?
We love the federal government. That's why we're doing. No.
Well, no. Were you happy with the change in tune, and how long did it take you to realize that she had changed her tune?
Oh, it was almost immediate that we realized it had happened. Before she went to D.C., Madison School District opted the superintendent took the chance to administer another test to his students. He wasn't going to do the SBAC. And there was a letter that came out of the State Department's office to all the other superintendents in the state supporting Dr. Thomas and his decision to not take the SBAC. And it was a really positive thing. They agreed with it. She goes back to Washington, D.C. and comes back singing a whole different tune. And suddenly this district is getting pressure from our State Department, from other school districts around them, and from Washington, D.C., saying you have to take this test or that we're going to withdraw funding. I've done enough research.
You have to take this test or we're going to withdraw the funding. And
they can't do that when you really look into the laws. And I've got the research on my website. When you look into the laws, there's $58,000 statewide that they can withhold from schools. So, she comes back singing the federal song where before she was all about states' rights. And we heard over and over and over again, and I honestly believe this more from this administration than I did the previous one, they are trying to do what is best for students. But they got cowed by the federal government. Again, we've done it again. We have folded.
Sounds like a flip-flop by Ibarra. Let's go to Boise and Blair at 580 KIDO with a question concerning education. Good morning, Blair.
Hi, ladies. Hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm a parent. I've got 6 kids in public schools. And one of the things that frustrates me is that my personal opinion, Common Core is there to take the parents out of the education process. I really appreciate you highlighting this. Thank you.
All right, Blair.
Thank you.
All right, we appreciate it. Quickly now, you've got some big events that you want people to be involved in?
Yes. This Friday night at 7 o'clock, Meridian, the Legion Hall, it's on Broadway. We have Lily Tang Williams coming in to speak about Common Core. She was born and raised in communist China. She came over here, got looking at the system, got looking at Common Core, and said, this is exactly what they were doing to us in China. And she's willing to speak. She's coming for free to speak to people about the similarities. And then also on May 18th, we have something. We have joined forces with a group called the League of Extraordinary Parents. They've got a tour coming through called the Band of Mothers, and you can either do the all-day event or just the afternoon event. It's an educational seminar. We're going to have a lot of different classes and meetings where we're going to help teach parents how to get involved in your children's education. What are some things you can do to support grassroots movements that are trying to help build parental support and support parental rights? We've got Russ Fulcher who's willing to speak on why it's important that we get involved in the electoral process. And it should be a really good, a really enlightening event. And that's the 18th. And my mind is drawing a blank on the address on it. But they can go to our website, and it'll be up there.
And your website, quickly?
IdahoansForLocalEducation.com.
We appreciate it. And finally, why is it important to be involved and not be an absentee parent when your kids are in school?
I would say it's really important because in the classroom, for instance, I just had an assignment come home that my son had to write about something that's happening in today's world that violates the UN Charter of Human Rights. So we've studied the Constitution for about the first 2 weeks of school, and the entire rest of the year has been regarding the UN Charter of Human Rights. So
it's a global world we're living in now.
It is a global world. It is a global world. You're right.
Not only that, but nobody knows your child like you do. Nobody understands their strengths and their weaknesses and what they really need more than you do as a parent. And I love Idaho teachers. I think they do a lot of good work. But somehow, somewhere in the system, we have forgotten that parents play the primary role in a child's life.
Idahoans for LocalEducation.com. All right, ladies, thank you very much. You're listening to Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO.